Hello, and thanks for joining us from our studios in Israel. Coming up in today's newscast, Turkey drops a major case against Israeli soldiers involved in the Mavi Marmara incident. The United States may release a Guantanamo prisoner to Israel for prosecution, and it looks like Israeli women may have a new opportunity to serve in combat in the IDF. I'm Natasha Kirchak here with the latest news in Israel. It's been 6 years since the infamous Mavi Marmara flotilla raid that demolished ties between Turkey and Israel. And this weekend, a Turkish court finally dismissed a case brought on by the victims of the incident against Israel. Israeli-Turkish relations broke down in 2010 when a flotilla full of Turkish pro-Palestinians attempted to breach Israel's blockade of Gaza. Israeli commandos were forced to raid the Mavi Marmara ship when it failed to follow Israeli military orders, and 10 activists were killed in the incident. Since then, a Turkish court has been trying a case against the Israeli army officers involved in the flotilla takeover. Now it looks like that case has been dropped, and so have the arrest warrants against them. A lawyer from the Humanitarian Relief Foundation says the judge dismissed the case very quickly.
İzahatlarımız henüz bitmemiş olmasına rağmen bizlerin sözlerini kesti ve alelacele bir şekilde karar verme yönünde kendisi ihsasta bulundu. Bunun üzerine bizler de mahkemenin bu kararı vereceğini çok net bir şekilde gördüğümüzden dolayı tepki olarak mahkemeyi reddettik ve bu kararı yüzümüze okuyamazsınız dedik. Onun için mahkemeyi terk ettik.
Suffice it to say, pro-Palestinian activists and prosecutors on the case are not happy. The Mavi Marmara may have only been one ship, but it was part of a larger flotilla, and the court case was brought on behalf of 740 victims from 37 countries who claim they were wounded or imprisoned during the raid.
Bütün hukuki süreçleri devam ettireceğiz. Yani hukuki süreç henüz bitmiş değil. Bununla ilgili bütün yolları yürüteceğiz, devam ettireceğiz. Ama meslektaşlarım da belirttiği gibi zaten İsrail mahkum olmuştur. Bu konuda müsterih olunuz. Hukuk nezdinde de biz bunun tescillenmesini arzu ediyorduk ve Türkiye Mahkemesi'nin de böyle bir şansı vardı. Ancak bu şansı elinin tersiyle tepmiş oldu.
This year, Israel and Turkey have finally signed an agreement to restore ties. As part of the deal, Israel has agreed to pay out $20 million to the families of those killed on the vessel. In return, Turkey has promised to drop all charges against the soldiers involved in the Mavi Marmara incident. In June, the two countries agreed to normalize ties, all as part of a move to work together against mutual security risks in the Middle East and to collaborate in potentially lucrative Mediterranean gas deals. Israel is now moving much closer to its two allies in the Mediterranean, Greece and Cyprus, and it's all in an effort to battle shared natural disasters in the region. Last month, Israel faced some of the country's worst wildfires in history, with a rash of blazes burning thousands of acres and damaging hundreds of homes in Haifa. As over 80 Israelis were evacuated from the area, Greece and Cyprus were two of the first countries to help fight the fires. Now the nations have pledged to create an emergency response force with Israel to enhance regional cooperation when it comes to combating natural disasters.
Μας διακήρυξη στέλνουμε ένα καθαρό και στεναρό αλλά και καθαρό μήνυμα για το γεγονός ότι η Κύπρος, το Ισραήλ και η Ελλάδα στέκονται μαζί στην αντιμετώπιση φυσικών καταστροφών καθώς και άλλων προκλήσεων που αφορούν την αντιμετώπιση εκτάκτων καταστάσεων.
Over the weekend, Israeli Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu greeted his Greek and Cypriot counterparts in Jerusalem.
This is a meeting of genuine friendship. There are shared values between us. We're three democracies in the Eastern Mediterranean. We've come to the conclusion quite a few years ago that we have so much to gain by cooperating with each other, and we're doing that. Point of fact, including with the new agreement we signed today, but throughout the years.
Israel has also provided lots of assistance to Cyprus in times of need. In June, the Jewish nation sent out 6 planes to help bring Cypriot wildfires under control. Now Jerusalem and Nicosia are strengthening ties alongside Athens even further by signing cooperation agreements in a number of fields.
We are dealing also with matters of economy, with R&D, energy. That's a very big topic.
The plans also include mutual efforts in science, education, technology, and energy sectors. The talks are the second in a series of meetings meant to help the 3 allies deal with developing large gas reserves recently found in the Mediterranean Sea.
We have gas fields, we have joint interests. We know we want to explore the development of these gas fields and the provision of the gas to European markets. This is something that occupies our time and our attention. I hope we can move forward on it.
Ties between Israel, Greece, and Cyprus have grown in recent years, largely because of the tension between Israel and Turkey. Now that ties between Ankara and Jerusalem are beginning to improve, some have questioned how committed Israel will remain to its Mediterranean allies. But the Israeli Prime Minister has made it clear that the Jewish state's cooperation with Greece and Cyprus stands on its own. As U.S. President-elect Donald Trump continues to appoint more members to his cabinet here in Israel, more and more people are wondering how his picks will affect American policy in the region. ILTV's Steve Leibowitz sat down with U.S.-Israel affairs expert Dr. Gerald Steinberg, who seems to believe Trump's administration is likely to be realistic when it comes to the Middle East.
Always cautious about making predictions. Based on what we've seen so far, and it's still early days, right? We're still in the beginning of December, so we have at least 6-7 weeks before Trump takes office, and it usually takes a few months for any new administration to really establish policy guidelines. And I think in this case we might even see a longer period. But the appointments are very important. Mike Pompeo, the congressman from Kansas, who is a very serious player, he was on the Intelligence Committee, I believe, and he understands the region very well. He was here maybe a year ago or so. I met with him. Other people obviously had some time to talk to him. And you see someone, this is the head of the CIA, who really understands the region, understands Israel's position. It's not the type of ideological approach and the very, I'll use a careful term here, optimistic, some people might say naive, but I'm saying optimistic approach that the Obama administration took towards Israel, Palestinians, Iran, and other issues. I think, and certainly the Iranians are very concerned, I think for good reason, about the Trump administration trying to roll back or talking about rolling back this agreement that was reached over a year ago, which was very problematic on the Iranian nuclear program. So we're going to, I think, see a more aggressive approach on strategic issues by the Trump administration, I would guess. And I'm not sure how they're going to play the Israeli-Palestinian issue. It's all over the place right now. We hear different expressions, but probably not the type of approach that we've had from Obama. Probably not so much squeezing on Israel, but you never know. Reagan had a peace plan that he proposed and promoted. It took a while to realize that it wasn't based on anything substantive. Palestinians have got to sort out their internal issues. Who knows when that's going to happen? Until that happens, there's really not much to talk about. So all these factors, I think, from the appointments we've had so far, the Trump people are solid. Whether you agree with their ideology or not, these are people who have the experience, who have the knowledge so far in most cases in our area. It'll be interesting. All of the candidates that are being considered for Secretary of State are candidates that certainly, not just a matter of being sympathetic to Israel, but they're realists. They understand what's going on here, that it's not trying to devise and create a whole new international peace framework or Middle East peace framework.
Some people, many in the Jewish community, have expressed concern about Steve Bannon and his influence that he may have on President Trump. Others, including Ron Dermer, our ambassador, says we'll work with him, and actually Bannon has a record which you certainly cannot say is anti-Israel. I mean, he's got a very pro-Israel record. He seems to admire Israel. It was on the questions of anti-Semitism. Do you see any problems with Steve Bannon?
I'm an outsider. I live in Israel. I look in at the United States. I was there for a few days. I go back and forth, but I can't really say I have much depth in this issue. With that caveat, I think the real problem is the alt-right. It's the anti-Semitism, which did get a platform and was reflected in different ways, including on Breitbart and other platforms where Steve Bannon has been involved. What we hear from him, and mostly from people who worked with him and know him, people who are involved in Israel, people who are Jewish, say that he himself is not anti-Semitic. On the contrary, there were certain rumors and reports, but let's leave those aside. What's lacking, as I sit from here, is a strong denunciation. The denunciations that come are usually ones that have been forced on, that have been have been asked about. When a journalist or somebody is sitting with Trump and asks the question, or with Bannon, he says, "Yes, of course we denounce this." That's not enough. I think there are many more anti-Semitic acts in the United States, at least reported, than we've seen for many years.
The ADL is appalled by what's going on in the States.
Yeah, and they're the ones who track it. There's some criticism also of the ADL on some of these issues, so I'm not going to, again, these are internal American Jewish issues, and those really do have to be worked out. There are a lot of issues in the American Jewish leadership that need to be sorted out. I have my own comments, but I'll leave that. They give us advice. Sometimes it would be useful for us to give them advice, but I'm going to leave that for another discussion. But the anti-Semitism is disturbing. It's there, and it needs to be confronted, and one would hope and expect that Steve Bannon and Trump himself will be much more upfront in saying these people have absolutely no place in our administration or in our support groups.
It looks like an alleged Islamist extremist from Kenya who's been held behind bars for nearly a decade in Guantanamo Bay is finally going to face justice here in Israel. Aaron, thanks so much for joining us. Tell us about this man. Who is he?
All right, so the suspect is named Mohammed Abdul Malik Bajabu. And actually, he's suspected of attacking Israeli interests in Kenya back in November of 2002. So it's really, he's only now, in order to get rid of all the inmates in Guantanamo and ideally close it down, the U.S. is now looking towards other countries to take these prisoners.
Right, because it's not often that the United States offers to send out Guantanamo prisoners for prosecution in other nations. This is a relatively new happening. So how likely is Israel to actually take on this suspect?
Jerusalem is expected to greenlight the move, but we'll have to wait and see. The 43-year-old terrorist is suspected of 2 crimes. The first was a devastating car bombing of an Israeli-owned hotel in Mombasa that killed 13 people. The second was the firing of a surface-to-air missile at an Israeli jet with 271 passengers on board at the nearby airport, which failed to inflict any casualties. It remains unknown how the U.S. captured Bajabu, who's been detained in Guantanamo since 2007. U.S. President Barack Obama wanted to close the controversial prison facility for years, but since most of the remaining 59 inmates are considered too dangerous to ever be released, Congress is now seeking third-party nations to take them. The White House is now believed to be pressuring the FBI to give Jerusalem all of the compiled evidence, including his confessions, so that the Jewish state can render its decision about whether or not to accept the suspected terrorist.
Israel is soon set to become the first country other than the U.S. to have an F-35 stealth fighter jet squadron. The 50 planes are to be delivered in installments, starting with the first 2 tomorrow. Joining me in the studio today is a former head of Israeli Air Force intelligence, Brigadier General Ram Shmueli, to tell us more about the new aircraft. Thanks so much for coming in.
Thank you.
All right, so, Israel currently has a good-sized fleet of F-16s. Now, what are the main differences between the F-16s and the F-35s, and why do we need these F-35s?
It's a whole new generation of airplane. Actually, this is the 5th generation. People speaking that the next generation will be unmanned airplane. But as for now, for the next 40 years, we have the F-35, which is the most advanced airplane in the world. And it's bringing a lot of capabilities that we don't have in the F-16s and F-15s.
Tell us about some of those capabilities.
So, first of all, it flies very fast. It can go beyond the radar, so the radar can't detect those airplanes, so it can go high and attack very far away from the targets. And actually, the capability of EW, the electronic capability, war electronic capability, It's protect this airplane, kind of an envelope around this airplane that can protect it to go everywhere, unseen, and very well protected against missiles and all the other threats that jet airplanes face in the war arena.
Interesting.
So the maintenance of this airplane is very new. The capabilities inside the airplanes, this is the most advanced American avionics, but luckily we have our own segment in this airplane. We have the freedom to put some Israeli innovation, Israeli high-tech inside this airplane, and this make the Israeli version very unique and
Even
different.
better, right? So, I also understand that there is an accompanying helmet for pilots within this plane that has some special features. Can you tell us about them?
The most advanced helmet sight in the airplanes in the world, this is Elbit system, Israeli Elbit system helmet sight. And this helmet sight, we have it on our F16 and F15s. But the new version of the helmet sight on the F35 is much more advanced, since actually can detect a couple of targets in the same time. So actually you fly there and I look at you as a target and I don't have to fly to your direction. I can shoot a missile and it can go like this and it go here and it can shoot a couple of targets in the same time. So it's very well advanced. It's science fiction, but it is working on those airplanes, and this is Israeli high-tech industrial that put inside those airplanes.
Now, there are some criticizing reports about the F-35 plane, saying that they need a lot of repairs, or there are at least a few things that need to be worked on within the planes, and that they're actually not worth all of the money that the Israeli army is paying for them. How do you respond to these critics? Are these fair criticisms?
Back in 1995, I was a squadron commander that we bought the new version of F-16, F-16C and D. And every time you got a new airplane, you have some maintenance technologies that are new for you, and you have to be, and it's challenging to make it better and to cope with all those capabilities, new technology. Nevertheless, every generation, we have the best people in the squadron and in Nevatim base, and we learn those systems and we are ready to fix them in case of malfunctions. So every airplane that come to the fleet got kind of almost double. If we have 2% malfunction in F-16, so new airplanes have 4% malfunctions. But in 2 or 3 years, we get used to it and then it goes down to 2%. So in a sense, it's the burst problem that have every airplane that we buy.
Now, I mean, you personally, having been in the air, had such a high position in the Air Force, having dealt with this, like you said, in the 1990s, do you have any concerns regarding the F-35 plane specifically that haven't been released or discussed in the public?
The big issue, of course, is this capability of long range, very secret, unseen capability of this airplane. As we know for now, this is well proved in the American Air Force, and we see it operational in the last 3-4 years in the American Air Force. This technology is also working on the F-22 that runs in the American Air Force for almost 15 years. So in a sense, I feel that we have now kind of a breakthrough of capability of the Israeli Air Force. And this is only the first shipment. We are going to buy 2 squadrons, and in the future maybe more. And it will solve a couple of the technology and couple of capabilities that we want to enhance in the last couple of years.
What are some of those capabilities, and specifically? You said this, is Israel's going to be adding its own technology. What can we expect? Are we allowed to know about some of this technology?
We are well known for our air-to-air missiles. Those missiles are slew to the helmet sight. So Israeli Python 5 and maybe in the future more than that, Python 6, those are the most advanced missiles, air-to-air missiles. This is one hand. On the other hand, we have a very developed industry of weapons. And the issue is how many targets can one airplane can hit, how many targets he can hit simultaneously. If we compare to 1973 war, we got 4 ship formation, they went for 1 target. Today, one F16 can hit 4 targets. And this F35, one airplane can hit 15 and 20 targets in the same time. So the issue is how much it is effective and how much it can destroy the targets in the enemy territory efficiently and quickly.
Now, are there any comparable aircrafts that exist right now, in other countries in the world, or does the F-35 really give Israel the military advantage that it needs to maintain a leader militarily in the Middle East?
Always in the last 50 years, when the Americans build the new version of airplane, the Chinese and the Soviet and the Russians are going a couple of years later, and they build something different but equivalent to the new airplane. So in the future, we will face kind of Russians or Chinese, those kind of developed 5th generation airplane. But as we know from the last years, they will never hit the capability of the American airplanes, and mainly when you add to these American airplanes those Israeli technology.
So here's my final question for you, and you mentioned this to me before we started our interview, but right now we're in a generation where we do have pilots, within planes, but there's a chance that we're going to have planes that soon exist without anybody driving them, no pilots. When is that going to happen? Do you think that's going to happen anytime soon? And what will that look like for Israel? What will that mean for Israel?
Luckily, I was born in the times that there is a manned airplane, but to address your question, Israel have many unmanned airplanes right now. But the mixture, the capability of a manned airplane is still the most capable airplanes that we have. So the mixture between the unmanned airplanes, which we can bring many of those, and some very advanced airplanes like the F-35 and of course the F-16 and the F-15, this kind of mixture is now the best way we can run our Air Force. In the future, yes, you're right, in 2050, maybe we'll have only unmanned airplane.
Is that something good? Is that something that Israel would want and see as a positive advancement?
The question is how much we are efficient and we can cope with the enemy capabilities. If we can do it with no pilots, it's fine. As for now, we can't. We need this F-35, and we are very happy to have them tomorrow morning.
Absolutely. Well, thank you so much for coming in and giving us some more information about these incredible aircraft. Israel's waiting to take possession of the new Sa'ar 6 warships now being built in Germany. And the most progressive onboard addition isn't going to be the cutting-edge technology, but instead the likely presence of female Israeli combat troops. Yes, that's right. Despite recent complaints from some of the country's Orthodox rabbis about girls in the army, the chief of staff of the Israeli Defense Forces says he's now considering the opening of even more combat positions to the nation's young women. And that will include their deployment on the new warships intended to protect Israel's offshore natural gas rigs in the Mediterranean. While the religious clergyman specifically voiced objections over mixed-gender tank crews, Lieutenant General Gadi Eisenkot says no one has yet put males and females together in tanks. Female troops already serve in a number of naval units, but their role has been limited due to the lack of available living space on sea vessels. This will change on the new Sa'ar 6 because the warship is reportedly designed to include separate sleeping quarters for both genders. Israel's proposed integration of women in more combat positions isn't just limited to the Navy. They'll also likely be assigned to the Armored Corps and the Search and Rescue Unit of the Air Force, making it all the more likely that we're about to see even greater opportunities for the young female recruits to serve the Jewish homeland.
Masa Israel is home to the widest variety of immersive international experiences for Jewish young adults 18 to 30. Find the right study abroad internship, service learning, or Jewish studies program to help you grow as a person, a professional, and a leader, while also developing a robust global professional network that includes Israelis and Jews from around the world.
And now for our Hebrew word of the day. They say that with every passing day we get a little bit older and a little bit wiser. So today's word is gil, meaning age. A person's gil has always been an important part of their personality. If you ask a child, "Be'eze gilata?" or "At what age are you?" you might get an answer like 4.5. This is because a child really feels the time and how every moment brings with it something new and potentially wonderful. That's probably why gil can also mean joy or delight in Hebrew. But after a certain age, many of us forget this basic fact, and we let the number associated with our gil get us down. So next time your birthday comes around and you're feeling old, remember that as the saying goes, gil is an issue of mind over matter. If you don't mind it, it doesn't matter. All right, let's go ahead and take a look at the weather forecast.
ILTV's weather forecast is sponsored by Adopt a Savta, taking care of Israel's lonely Holocaust survivors.
Tonight will be partly cloudy with a low of 50 degrees or 10 degrees Celsius. Tomorrow you can expect a slight rise in temperatures, but with a chance of rain and a high of 68 or 20 degrees Celsius. All right, everybody, that's it for today's news. Today's exchange rate is 3.83 shekels to the American dollar. Remember to sign up for our daily newsletter at iltv.tv. Thanks for watching and see you tonight.